I booked the trip on a Tuesday night because Tuesdays feel safe. Nothing dramatic ever happens on a Tuesday. No big announcements. No family crises. No emotional ambushes. It felt like a neutral day to do something selfish. I'd been putting it off for months. It wasn't some luxury thing. Just 2 weeks somewhere warm. Non-refundable because it was cheaper that way, and I told myself that was the real reason. It wasn't. The real reason was I knew if it was refundable, I'd cave. Maya was sitting on the couch behind me while I had the flights open. She didn't say much. She just watched me stare at the screen like I was defusing a bomb. "You're overthinking," she said finally. "I know. You've been talking about this for a year. I know. So book it." I kept hovering over the purchase button like something bad would happen if I clicked it. And that's the thing. Something always does. I grew up in a house where plans were conditional. You didn't plan things without checking first. You didn't leave for long stretches. You didn't disappear. If you did, something would conveniently come up. But I clicked it anyway. Confirmation email. Tickets paid. Hotel locked in. 2 weeks in July. For about 10 minutes, I felt excited. Then my phone buzzed. "Mom, call me when you can." No context. No emoji. Just that. I didn't call her right away. I told myself I was busy. I told myself she probably just wanted to chat. But my stomach did that thing it does where it feels like it's preparing for impact. Maya noticed. "You didn't tell them yet, did you?" she asked. "No." "Why?" I shrugged. "I don't know." That wasn't true. I knew exactly why. Because whenever I tell my mom I'm doing something she didn't approve first, the energy shifts. It's subtle at first. Questions that aren't questions. Tone changes. Long pauses. I waited until the next evening to call. She picked up fast. "Finally," she said. "Hi, Mom. Are you alone?" That question always comes first. I don't know why it still irritates me, but it does. "I'm at home," I said. "Maya's here." A small pause. Not long, but noticeable. "Oh," she said. "Well." We did the normal small talk for maybe 30 seconds. It felt forced. Then she said, very casually, "Your aunt mentioned you're going somewhere." There it was. I exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I booked a vacation." Silence. "How long?" 2 weeks. Another silence, heavier. "You didn't tell me." "I was going to." "When?" I didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound defensive. "Soon." She made a small noise like she was disappointed, but trying not to show it. "Your father hasn't been feeling well," she said. The shift was so fast I almost didn't catch it. "What?" I said. "He's been having chest pressure. Off and on." My stomach dropped. "Chest pressure like, what do you mean?" "It's probably stress," she said quickly. "But it's been a few weeks." "A few weeks?" "You didn't tell me." "We didn't want to worry you." That line. That exact line. I walked to the kitchen without realizing it and leaned against the counter. "Has he seen a doctor?" "He doesn't like going in," she said. "You know how he is." I didn't know how he was. Avoidant. Minimizing. Willing to ignore things if it keeps peace. "But chest pressure isn't something you just ignore," I said. "We're monitoring it." "Monitoring it." "Mom," I said carefully, "that's not really how that works." She sighed. Not angry yet. Just loaded. "I just think," she said slowly, "that this might not be the best time for you to go away." There it was. The real point. I closed my eyes for a second. "Are you saying I should cancel?" "I'm saying your father might need you." Might. I hated that word. "Is he in immediate danger?" I asked. "Well, I don't know," she snapped. "I'm not a doctor. That's why I'm asking if he's seen one." Silence. "Not yet." I felt something uncomfortable start to build under the fear. "So he hasn't gone?" I said. "We were going to schedule something," she replied. "When?" "Soon." The conversation started looping. I could feel it. "If he's having chest symptoms for weeks, that's not something you wait on," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. She didn't respond to that. Instead, she said, "I just think it's strange that you choose now of all times to disappear for 2 weeks." Disappear. I pressed my fingers into the counter. "I'm not disappearing. I'm taking PTO. You're going to be out of reach. I have a phone." "You'll be on a beach," she said, like that was morally wrong. The guilt started creeping in, and I hated that it worked. I pictured my dad sitting in his chair, not saying anything. I pictured him uncomfortable, quiet about it. "What exactly is happening with him?" I asked again. "He gets tightness," she said. "Sometimes short of breath." Short of breath. That's serious, I said. She didn't respond directly. Instead, her voice shifted into something softer, more emotional. I just didn't expect you to prioritize a vacation over your family. There it was. Not direct, but clear. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I'm not prioritizing a vacation over anyone. That's what it feels like, she said. We went quiet. I didn't know what to say without sounding like a bad son. Maya walked into the kitchen and leaned against the doorway, listening. I asked, "Can I talk to Dad?" There was a pause long enough to notice. "He's resting," she said. "Can I call him later?" "I'll see." I don't know why that answer bothered me so much. "I just need to know if this is something urgent," I said. "It's urgent enough," she replied. "That doesn't mean anything." She exhaled sharply. "You always have to debate everything." I felt myself getting defensive. "I'm not debating. I'm trying to understand." "You're trying to justify," she corrected. The conversation kept circling back to the same place. No clear information, just implication. Finally, she said, "If something happens while you're gone, I don't know how you'll live with yourself." And that one landed hard. I swallowed. That's not fair. I'm just being honest. It wasn't yelling. That's what made it worse. It was calm, controlled. We ended the call without resolution. No agreement. No explosion. Just tension. I stood in the kitchen staring at nothing for a long time. Maya waited until I put the phone down. "Well?" she asked. "She says Dad's been having chest pressure." Maya's expression shifted immediately. "Has he seen a doctor?" "No." Her eyebrows went up. "They're monitoring it." She stared at me for a second. "That's not a plan." "I know. Do you believe it's serious?" I hesitated. And that hesitation said everything. "I don't know," I admitted. "It could be. But the timing feels convenient," she finished. I hated that word too. "Maybe I'm being paranoid," I said. "Or maybe you've seen this pattern before." I sat down at the table. "If I go and something actually happens," I started. Maya nodded slowly. "Then you'd feel guilty." "Yeah. And if you cancel and it turns out he's fine?" I didn't answer. She didn't need me to. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined a hospital room. Or worse. By morning, I'd half convinced myself I should just cancel. Not because she was right. Because I didn't want the weight of what if. Around noon, my sibling texted me. "Mom says you're still going on that trip." I stared at the message. "Yeah, I think so." A pause. "Dad's not great." "Not great how?" "He's just tired." That wasn't helpful. "Is he seeing a doctor?" "Mom says they're handling it." I rubbed my face. "Handling it how?" No response for a few minutes. Then, "Why are you making this hard?" That one irritated me more than the guilt. I wasn't making anything hard. I was asking questions. By that evening, the narrative had shifted slightly. Aunt Linda texted, "Heard about your dad. Tough time to be traveling." So it was spreading. And I hadn't even decided anything yet. I texted Mom, "I'm coming down this weekend to see him." Her reply was immediate. "If you're coming, you're staying." That stopped me cold. I hadn't said I was staying. Just visiting. I typed, "I'm coming to check on him." 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, "We'll talk when you get here." And for some reason, that felt worse than anything she'd said before. Because it meant the real conversation hadn't even started yet. The drive down felt longer than usual. 2 hours isn't bad. I've done it 100 times. But this time my head wouldn't shut up. Every few minutes I'd swing between. I'm overreacting. He could be fine. And what if this is actually serious and I'm being selfish? Maya came with me. I didn't ask her to. She just said, "I'm not letting you walk into that alone," and grabbed her bag. I didn't argue. We pulled into my parents' driveway around noon on Saturday. The house looked normal. Lawn trimmed. Porch swept. Nothing about it screamed medical emergency. Mom opened the door before we knocked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "So you came," she said. "Yeah," I said. "How's Dad?" "He's resting," she replied. "You didn't need to bring her." Maya gave a small polite nod. "Hi." Mom didn't respond to it, just turned and walked back inside. The house smelled like coffee and something fried. TV noise from the living room. Dad was sitting in his chair, remote in hand. He looked fine, maybe a little pale, but he's always been pale. "Hey," he said, like this was a normal weekend visit. "Hey," I said, crouching down next to him. "How are you feeling?" He shrugged. "I'm okay." "Chest pressure?" "Sometimes." "Right now?" He hesitated. "Just a second." "Not really." Mom stood behind us like a supervisor. It's stress, she said. He just needs to relax. I looked at Dad again. Have you had shortness of breath? Mom answered before he did. A little. Dad shifted. Not that bad. That bothered me. Not the symptoms. The way she kept answering for him. When did it start? I asked him directly. He glanced at her, then back at me. A few weeks, he said. And you haven't seen a doctor. He shook his head slightly. Mom jumped in. We were going to schedule something. When? I asked. Soon. The word again. I stood up slowly. Let's just go now, I said. Urgent care is 15 minutes away. Mom's head snapped toward me. Absolutely not. Why not? Because he doesn't need it. How do you know? I live with him. That doesn't make you a cardiologist. The words came out sharper than I meant them to. Dad flinched. Mom's eyes hardened. You come in here and start issuing orders? She asked. I'm not issuing orders, I said. I'm worried. You're dramatic, she shot back. He's had tightness before. It passes. Tightness plus shortness of breath isn't nothing, I said. Google doesn't make you a doctor, she replied. Maya stepped in gently. No one's saying it's a heart attack. But chest symptoms aren't something you just monitor. Mom turned to her. This is family business. I felt myself getting hot. She's my partner. She's not blood, Mom said. That stung more than I expected. Dad tried to stand up like he was going to defuse it. I'm fine. Really? Then humor me, I said. Let's just get you checked. Mom folded her arms. And who's paying for that? The room went quiet. We have insurance, I said. Not good insurance. How much is the copay? She didn't answer. How much? I repeated. Dad cleared his throat. It's not just the copay. I felt my stomach drop a little. What do you mean? He looked embarrassed. We're a little behind. Behind on what? Silence. Mom answered, her tone suddenly defensive. Bills. What bills? Mortgage, Dad said quietly. That shifted everything. How behind? I asked. Mom shot him a look, but he kept going. A few months. The air felt heavy. You could have told me, I said. And what? Mom snapped. Begged. That's not begging. That's asking for help. We shouldn't have to ask, she said. You're doing well. You got promoted. You're going on trips. There it was. The trip. So this is about money, I said slowly. It's about priorities, she corrected. No, I said. It's about money. Dad rubbed his face. He looked exhausted. Mom's voice rose slightly. If you're spending thousands on a beach while we're drowning, that says something. What does it say? I asked. That you've forgotten where you came from. The conversation started tilting into familiar territory. You never asked me for help, I said. You implied Dad might end up in the hospital. I was emotional, she snapped. You said if something happened while I was gone, I'd have blood on my hands. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. Dad stood up fully now. Okay, let's calm down. No one calmed down. Mom's eyes were glossy now. I can't believe this. We sacrificed everything for you. There it was again. Sacrifice. For me to what? I asked. Live my own life. For you to abandon us? I'm not abandoning you. You are, she insisted. You're choosing a vacation over your father. I felt something inside me snap a little. I'm choosing not to cancel my life every time there's a problem, I said. Her face changed at that. Cold. So that's what this is, she said quietly. You think we're a problem? I didn't answer fast enough. She took that as confirmation. You think you're better than us now. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. The conversation started going in circles again. Every sentence twisted slightly. I looked at Dad. Do you want to go to urgent care? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. He wasn't answering based on his health. He was answering based on the room. I don't want to make things worse, he said finally. Make things worse. That wasn't a medical answer. That was a survival answer. Mom jumped on it. See? He's fine. No, I said quietly. He's trying to keep the peace. That was probably a mistake. Mom's eyes flashed. Don't psychoanalyze us. I'm not, I said. I'm just saying. You're saying we're manipulative, she cut in. I didn't deny it. Silence stretched. Finally, I said, how much do you need? Dad looked up, surprised. Mom blinked. What? How much are you behind? She hesitated. Why are you asking like it's a transaction? She demanded. Because it is, I said. That landed wrong. Her face flushed. You think everything is about money. No, I said. But this is. Dad looked like he wanted to disappear. Mom's voice lowered, almost shaking. It's not about money. It's about loyalty. There it was. The real currency. If you loved us, she continued, you'd cancel the trip and help us get back on our feet. I felt something tighten in my chest. So love equals cancellation? I asked. It equals showing up, she said. I am showing up, I said. I drove 2 hours. Then stay, she said immediately. For how long? As long as it takes. And the trip? She didn't answer. That was the answer. Maya finally spoke, quietly. If this is about the mortgage, we can look at numbers. But guilt isn't a financial plan. Mom's head snapped toward her. You don't get to talk about my house. I stepped slightly in front of Maya without thinking. Stop, I said. Mom looked at that movement, and something shifted in her expression. Oh, she said softly. So that's how it is. I felt tired suddenly. Not angry. Just tired. I'm not canceling the trip, I said. The words hung there. Dad looked down. Mom's jaw tightened. So you're choosing a beach over your family, she said. I'm choosing not to be controlled, I replied. And I immediately regretted phrasing it that way, because her face changed instantly. Controlled. You think I control you? She asked. I opened my mouth, then closed it. That's not what I... You think I've controlled your whole life? She continued, voice rising. I think you guilt me, I said. And there it was. Out in the open. Dad muttered, don't do this. Mom laughed, short and sharp. You're unbelievable. I'm just being honest. No, she said. You're being cruel. The room felt too small. I realized something in that moment. This wasn't going to resolve cleanly. There wasn't going to be a reasonable middle ground where everyone felt heard. There was going to be compliance. Or fracture. And I didn't know if I was ready for fracture. Mom stepped closer to me. If you walk out of here and go on that trip, she said quietly, don't expect things to be the same when you get back. That wasn't a scream. That was a line drawn. I swallowed. Are you threatening me? I asked. I'm telling you actions have consequences. And manipulating me doesn't. Her face hardened completely. We raised you, she said. You owe us. There it was. Not loyalty. Debt. And something in me went still. You owe us. She didn't yell it. She said it like it was obvious. Like it had always been understood. Dad didn't correct her. That hurt more than the sentence. For what? I asked, and my voice sounded thin even to me. For everything, she said. The house. School. Your car. When you moved out. We helped you. You're counting that. I asked. I remember, she shot back. Maybe you don't. I didn't know what to say to that without sounding heartless. Of course they helped me. They were my parents. But hearing it framed like a running tab made my stomach turn. Dad tried again. We didn't keep score. Mom ignored him. If we're struggling and you're spending money on a beach, she said, that says everything. So tell me the number, I said. She blinked. The number, I repeated. How much are you behind? Dad shifted uncomfortably. Mom didn't answer. Why won't you just say it? I asked. Because it's not about that, she snapped. It is, I said. You brought up money. It's about respect, she corrected. We were back in the loop. Respect. Loyalty. Sacrifice. All words that meant, do what I want. I rubbed my face with both hands. I'll help, I said finally. But I'm not canceling the trip. The silence that followed was different. Dad looked up, surprised. Mom stared at me like she didn't understand what I'd just said. You'll help, she repeated. Yes. Without staying? Yes. Without canceling? Yes. Her mouth tightened. That's not help, she said. I felt something heavy settle in my chest. So it's conditional, I said quietly. You're twisting this, she replied. No, I said. You don't want help. You want me here. Under control. That word again. I shouldn't have said it. Her face went cold. You're not as important as you think you are, she said. That one landed harder than the rest. I laughed, but it wasn't amused. It was tired. This isn't about being important. You think we can't survive without you? She continued. We survived before you. Then why are you telling me I owe you? I shot back. Dad said my name softly, warning. I ignored it. You can't say I owe you and then act like I'm irrelevant, I said. Mom stepped closer. If you walk out that door and get on that plane, she said, don't call me when something happens. Like what? I asked. She didn't answer directly. You're choosing her, she said instead, nodding toward Maya. I turned to Maya instinctively. She hadn't spoken in a few minutes. She just stood there, steady. I'm choosing myself, I said. Mom shook her head slowly. No, you're choosing her. That narrative again. Outsider influence. Corruption. She didn't book the trip, I said. I did. Because she encouraged it. I'm not a child, I snapped. The word hung there. Child. Dad winced. Mom's eyes narrowed. You're acting like one, she said. That hit something old in me. I felt my throat tighten. For a second, I almost apologized. That reflex is strong, even now. But instead I said, I'm tired. The room went quiet. Tired of what? She asked. Tired of feeling guilty for having a life. Dad looked up at that. Mom stared at me like she didn't recognize me. You think we want you miserable? She asked. I think you want me available, I said. That's family, she shot back. No, I said. That's ownership. That was the moment. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just a line I couldn't uncross. Dad stood up fully now. Enough. His voice shook. We're not doing this. He looked at me. Then at Mom. We're not doing this, he repeated, softer. Mom turned on him. So you're taking his side? There aren't sides, he said weakly. There always are, she replied. That sentence said more than she realized. I felt something in me finally settle. There wasn't going to be understanding. There wasn't going to be a breakthrough. There was just a decision. I'm going on the trip, I said. Mom didn't react immediately. She just stared at me. Then she said, very quietly, if you do, don't expect things to be the same. That wasn't a scream. It wasn't dramatic. It was flat. I nodded once. Okay. I think that surprised her more than anything else I'd said. Okay, she repeated. Okay. Dad looked between us like he was watching something break in slow motion. Maya stepped closer to me. Not in a protective way. Just present. Mom's eyes filled, but I couldn't tell if it was anger or hurt. I never thought you'd be this selfish, she said. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Because anything I said would just feed the loop. So I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I just said, I'll transfer money to help with the mortgage. She shook her head. I don't want your charity. It's not charity, I said. It's help. If it doesn't come with loyalty, she said, it's nothing. And that was it. That was the fracture. Not screaming. Not a slammed door. Just the realization that the price of love was compliance. I walked to the front door. No one physically stopped me. Dad said my name once. Just once. Not loud. Not firm. Just my name. I looked back. He didn't ask me to stay. He didn't tell her to stop. He just looked tired. I think that's what hurt the most. We got in the car. My hands were shaking. Maya didn't speak until we were halfway down the street. You okay? She asked. I stared out the window. I don't know, I said honestly. Because I didn't. I felt guilty, and relieved, and scared, and weirdly lighter, all at the same time. And that combination felt wrong. Like if I was relieved, it meant I didn't love them enough. The drive back was quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The kind where you replay every sentence in your head and edit it into something better. I kept thinking of things I could have said differently. Less sharp. Less final. Maybe if I hadn't used the word control. Maybe if I hadn't said ownership. Maybe if I'd just kept it about the doctor. I almost turned the car around once. Not because I changed my mind. Because the idea of permanent damage scared me more than the idea of canceling a vacation. My phone buzzed halfway home. Mom, I hope the beach is worth it. I stared at the screen. No yelling. No drama. Just that. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, another one. Mom, don't ask us for anything again. That one hit harder. Because it implied I had been asking. I hadn't. If anything, I'd been over-functioning for years. When we got home, I felt drained. Not victorious. Not empowered. Just wrung out. That night, my sibling texted me. She's really upset. I typed back. Is Dad okay? He says he's fine. Has he seen a doctor? Not yet. I put my phone down after that. 2 days passed. No calls from Mom, which was unusual. Normally after a fight, there's a second wave. A reframe. A softer approach. Or an escalation. This time, silence. On Wednesday night, Dad called. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Hey, he said. Hey. There was an awkward pause. I went to urgent care, he said. My chest loosened a little. Okay. They ran some tests. Blood pressure's high. They adjusted medication. Nothing cardiac. I asked. Not right now. Relief hit me fast and messy. Good, I said. Another pause. She's still upset, he added. I know. She feels like you chose something else. I swallowed. I chose not to cancel my life, I said. He didn't argue. He didn't agree either. I don't like conflict, he said quietly. I know, I replied. We sat in silence for a few seconds. I'll send some money for the mortgage, I said. Not because I owe you. Just to help. He exhaled slowly. You don't have to. I want to. That was true. But I also knew something had shifted. If I sent money, it was on my terms. Not as proof of loyalty. After we hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. Mom didn't call. She didn't text. The group chat stayed quiet. It felt unnatural. The morning of the flight, I half expected something dramatic. A last-minute guilt message. A medical scare. A "we need you." Nothing came. At the airport, I felt tense the whole time. Like I was doing something wrong. Like I'd stolen something. When the plane lifted off, I watched the ground shrink and felt this strange mix of grief and calm. The first 2 days of the trip, I kept checking my phone. Nothing. No emergency. No crisis. Just normal updates from friends. Work notifications. It made something uncomfortable click into place. If this had been truly life or death, something would have happened. It hadn't, which meant the urgency had been emotional, not medical. On the 3rd day, I stopped checking my phone every hour. On the 5th day, I laughed without thinking about home. That part made me feel guilty, but I let myself feel it anyway. When we came back 2 weeks later, there was an email from Mom. Subject: I'm disappointed. It was long. She didn't mention the mortgage. She didn't mention the doctor. She framed the entire thing as emotional abandonment. You've changed. You've become cold. You used to put family first. No acknowledgement of the guilt tactics. No acknowledgement of the timing. Just her version. I read it twice. I didn't reply. Not because I had some grand no-contact strategy. Because I didn't have anything new to say. Anything I wrote would either restart the argument or be twisted. So I didn't engage. A few days later, she texted once more. I hope one day you understand the pain you've caused. That was it. No explosion. No official disowning. Just distance. It's been 8 months now. We don't talk regularly. Dad and I exchange occasional neutral updates. Weather. Medication adjustments. Surface things. Mom and I don't speak directly. There was no formal no-contact announcement. It just faded. I still helped with some of the mortgage that first month. Not the full amount. Just enough to ease the immediate pressure. After that, they refinanced. They didn't ask again, which tells me something important. If it had been survival, the asks would have continued. What they wanted wasn't just money. They wanted compliance. Do I regret going on the trip? No. Do I feel completely at peace about it? Also no. Sometimes I replay that living room conversation and wonder if I could have softened it. If I could have avoided the fracture. But then I remember something. The conversation wasn't really about a vacation. It was about whether my life belongs to me. For most of my adulthood, I thought being a good son meant staying available. Always reachable. Always ready to adjust. Always slightly guilty. And maybe that works in some families. In mine, it turned into expectation. Then obligation. Then debt. When she said, "You owe us," something snapped. Not in a dramatic way. Just quietly. Like a thread finally breaking after years of tension. I don't think my mom sees herself as manipulative. I think she sees herself as scared. Scared of losing relevance. Scared of losing control. Scared of aging. But fear doesn't justify ownership. And guilt isn't the same thing as love. If I learned anything from that week, it's this. Family coming first doesn't mean your life comes last. And sometimes the most dramatic decision isn't yelling or slamming a door. It's booking a non-refundable ticket and getting on the plane anyway.